Okay, welcome class to another lecture on planning research methods. And in the previous lectures, we have just discussed some fundamentals of research and different uh, scientific method or the logical method, some people call it. We have studied those, and then we have discussed the scientific hypothesis, and we will discuss some little bit about it. Anyone care to explain or define what does hypothesis mean? What is hypothesis? What is a hypothesis? Yes, Samad, please.
Sir, hypothesis can be defined as any sentence, any statement which can be tested.
Yes, precisely. So, which can be tested. So, based on some hypothesis, we are going to be making some kind of a strategy or a logical plan, a systematic order. So, maybe. So, that will help us, that strategy will help us achieve those or test those hypotheses through maybe research questions on objectives. And based on that strategy, we have a kind of a loose uh, idea that how which data needs to be collected and how it may be collected, and that will also link towards what kind of data analysis or data analysis technique will be used to test that hypothesis. Okay, and maybe then based on the findings you might have a discussion. So that strategy, that whole process or logical plan, I would say, uh, that plan is called your research design. So that strategy kind of holistically captures all of different aspects of your research and different processes, and then summarize into one thing, and that is the research design. Now, some people call it research methodology. So research methodology is kind of an alternative word used to research design. But in social sciences, especially, research design is viewed as a strategy. Uh, it involves different I would not say only one methodology. Research design basically tells you that what kind of different methodologies will be used in this research to test this particular hypothesis or to achieve this particular objective. Uh, Now, depending upon different fields, research design varies a lot. But in social sciences, we have kind of a generic or you can say, a framework, a generic framework which all of you will more or less will be following in your research. So now that research design, depending upon what kind of research it is, research design will vary. And in this presentation, in this lecture, I'll be talking about what kind of different research designs are out there and which research design is used to achieve certain targets, certain kind of. Now that can be based on time, maybe based on the your data. So that research design will vary, and we'll go into the typologies of these research designs. Uh, Now we'll begin with some certain with reintroduction or about research design. What is a research design? So for research design to achieve a particular hypothesis, we need to arrange some kind of your experiment. We want to design an experiment. We want to think how to achieve that hypothesis. What do we need to do to achieve this hypothesis? So you are kind of making a strategy. You are kind of I would say, hypothesis is a generic term. Is a hypothesis is very conceptual thing. So now we are going to be converting into operationalizing, something which we are going to be conducting in the field. So research design basically helps us in achieving that target. So it's a whole process. Now it is a plan. It is a structured strategy which will help us and which will help us guide this process. Okay. Now, this research design will ultimately help us in deciding what to do, where to do it, when to do it, and how much to do it, we need to do it. So research design is a kind of your research methodology or a strategy. And that again, well, I've answered it already that why do we need it, but it helps us make decisions about limiting your search, identifying which part of experiment, where should it be conducted, where should we get the material for it, where should be conducted, what sort of data, or you can say what kind of technique you're going to be using on that data. So that all helps us summarize your findings into an information. So no, the word research design implies that it is a, like it literally defines it to get we are designing your research. Okay, so it will have different components. So when we go into different typologies, then you will have an understanding that what is research design and how do we classify it to different things. So of course, it will help us define that what sort of data we need to collect and how to analyze the data. So there is some arguments or there are some understandings. Everyone's understanding regarding research design, it varies because their objective hypothesis varies. So for example, even if a two person have the same hypothesis, their research design might be different. Okay, they might have the same thing. They might, for example, you have seen to assess something. Let's talk about checking the structural integrity of a building. So there are different methodologies out there that can be tested to check a structural integrity of a building. Similarly, urban planning to let's say assess urban governance. So the terminology or this thing that varies, and some people will test urban governance through different means. Some might put some indicators, other might get an approach through maybe some qualitative interviews or argumentatively they might analyze it. So even if you have the same hypothesis, there might be different methodologies to achieve the same target. So depending on different methodologies employed, your research design between two students usually varies. Okay. Okay. So research design must contain your problem. It must, the whole research design, it should have the procedures needed to identify the data, collect the data, and analyze the data. It also helps you really get into it, what sort of sample we needed for our research. It really helps us in that. What methods are going to be using it? So, okay, so this is a generic research design framework. Some people also call it methodological framework of your research. It is based on from your research questions, from your hypothesis, from your objectives to the end product. Everything which is you're going to be everything which is entailed in this your research process, which is logical and systematic in order, or a strategy which helps you define your objective. So research design is like we have talked about questions, framework, and hypothesis. But after hypothesis formulation, now we need to know data. What is the source of data? We are going to be collecting it. Will it be primary? Will it be secondary? If it is primary, how will the primary data will be collected? Interviews, face-to-face interviews, questionnaire, household survey, uh, expert interviews. Okay, so these are primary. Secondary sources, literature review. So secondary sources are also there. Then research design will help you define that. For example, you have a problem of earthquake. You're working towards analysis, or let's say seismic hazard analysis. So what you do, you're not now, depending upon your hypothesis, you need to choose your area. You're not going to be using the earthquake assessment for, let's say, uh, for Lahore or for Karachi, which is arguably least less at risk as compared to maybe Peshawar, maybe some northern areas. Okay, so hypothesis and research design will help you target which should be your study area. And depending upon your study area, you might have some criteria for classifications and up to what level of administration, like maybe are you going to be working for national level, provincial level, district level, local level, community level, or even household level. So that is your breakup of your unit of measurement, something. Then is your sample design. So most of you, because it's social sciences, so most of you might be having some kind of a representative sample of the actual population in the field. So you need to choose what sort of sampling design is there. What sort of sampling design should I employ? There are a lot of different sampling formula out there, which helps you pick out the sample from a total population. So thinking on, and I'm not going into the exact details of sampling right now, but choosing that you will need a sample for it, and this is the most appropriate sample for my research. Research is part of your research design. So there are different sample sizes, sample methods. So that is again different debate. We will have a whole lecture on sampling, sampling formula and data collection. Okay, then is your data collection. What sort of tool or instrument you're going to be designing to achieve your particular hypothesis? And then also choosing or thinking about what sort of data analysis technique we need to be using, what kind of software do we need to analyze our data. So that all of this falls under the heading of research design. Any question till now? Anyone? Yes, Samad, please.
Sir, what about the literature review? Does it come under the same research design?
Okay, literature review basically helps you in designing your research design. It really helps you in research design. Now some people call it no, literature part must be a part of your research design. Now, and some people say no, it is not a part of it. But I would argue that if your objective is like to review current literature practices, or to review again coming to an example, let's say to review like we were talking about urban governance, to review or evaluate existing urban governance frameworks. Let's say this is an objective or hypothesis. Now, objective, you're going to be evaluating the current governance frameworks or governance methodologies, existing governance methodologies. So now that part needs to come from the literature review. And if it comes from the literature review, then maybe you need to add it under research design, because now it's coming under your hypothesis or testing of your objectives. Samad, are you clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So any other question? Please go ahead. Feel free. Yes, Rizwan, please.
बस वो सैंपल डिजाइन का था, लेकिन वो आप कह रहे हैं लेक्चर होगा तो उसमें क्लियर हो जाएगा मेरा.
Okay, great. So right now, I would think that this research design is very generic and very, I think it's very simple. And when we go into each different, like how to do data collection or sampling design, that might interest you more. But okay, moving on. Components. Conceptualization. So there are two or three components of I think 2 or 3. Yes, 3. So 3 components of research design. 3 major components of research design. First is conceptualization. Now, what is conceptualization? You might have heard about it. So same word understood in different meanings. Like sustainability, I've talked about in the class as well. That what does sustainable or what does the word infrastructure mean to a planner, engineer, or this? So that is conceptualizing. We are thinking or we are testing a phenomena, and that phenomena needs to be conceptualized, that we are or operationalizing this concept from this point of view. So you need to know about different concepts of the same terminology. So that is conceptualization, thinking about it. Then actually measuring that phenomena from a one particular angle, one particular methodology, assessing that phenomena. So that is operationalization. And to what extent, what, how, and when. Okay, to what extent are we going to be measuring it or going sampling to test that for particular phenomena? So that is your research component design. Okay, then I think should show this one. Okay, I'll come back to it. Okay, then okay, I'll go into conceptualization and the linkages in the coming slides. Okay, so data collection is still there. It's a part of your research design. We talked about it, analysis as well. Okay, so what really helps you choose a research design? Okay, so the first question which comes to your mind is, what is the study about? Okay, what are you trying to do? Okay, you're an urban planning students. You need to be you need to have some kind of link to the urban planning phenomena or problems relating to urban planning, which you can might help your research might help resolve. So, what is the study idea about? So you need to know about what are you going to do. That is actually your refining your research design, or you are actually designing your research this framework or methodology. Why the study made? Why are you going to be doing this study? So don't just answer that because we need it for the degree, but actually you are doing it because you need to understand a certain phenomena and maybe suggest some appropriate measures. Okay, where are you going to be operationalizing it? Okay, most of the time, what students usually, I've seen that students, they directly jump into that Multan is my study area and Multan has this problem. Rather than coming from the bottom that these are the problems prevalent, okay, and this problem is most common in maybe in Multan. So do not go for reverse engineering. So where will the study conducted? Where will you? So based on the phenomena, is the phenomena of tsunami? You need to go towards Karachi and Gawada, maybe. If you're going for doing it for the earthquake, maybe you need to go to the northern area, or maybe the areas near faults and what do you call it, edge of tectonic plates at those edges. So, and if it's flood, okay, are you going for flash flooding or riverine? Then you need to choose your area properly. Similarly, the same goes for the other concepts like governance, maybe urban livability. So that might even help you in understanding or choosing that should I go for a rural area or urban area or maybe peri-urban area. So it all depends upon different contexts. What sort of data do we need? Okay, we're talking about governance. So, okay, just I'll put a question out there. For measuring an effectiveness of urban governance, what sort of data you need to collect? Anyone? For assessing urban governance, effectiveness of urban governance, anyone? You're going to be assessing how much good governance is happening in, let's say, Islamabad. So what type of data or what type of data do you need to assess? Yes, Shweb, please.
सर एक कंपोनेंट ये हो सकता है कि डिस्पोजल रेट क्या है, मतलब लेट्स सपोज कोई एप्लीकेशन हम सबमिट कर रहे हैं एक आम जो है क्या कहते सिटीजन, तो कितनी जल्दी वो डिस्पोज ऑफ हो रही है.
हाँ जी, how much quickly it's addressing people, government is addressing, or that particular institution is addressing that. Okay, good. Anyone else? How do we judge effectiveness? Okay, so for Ashweb mentioned that for addressing effective, if good decision is made, right? So what sort of data, Ashweb, do we need for that?
सर उसके लिए हमें जिस तरह डिफरेंट डिपार्टमेंट में कितनी एप्लीकेशन डेली बेसिस पे या मंथली बेसिस पे जमा हो रही हैं, और जो उनको टाइम दिया गया था उसमें वो डिस्पोज ऑफ हुई या नहीं हुई. सेकंड, जो एप्लीकेंट्स थे वो सेटिस्फाइड हैं या नहीं सेटिस्फाइड. जी सर, और इस तरह का डाटा हमें चाहिए होगा सर.
Definitely. So now you're thinking about like your hypothesis was, or your I'll talk about objective. So objective was to measure, to assess effectiveness of good governance in Islamabad. So number one shape said, okay, maybe we need to go to the one window cell and we need to collect the data that how many applications are submitted each day, how much time is given, and how many applications are answered or returned back or resolved within a certain time period. So you'll get maybe some numbers. So this is the data. This is the data you require. So you're basically helping or designing your research. Okay, where can be the required data from? Okay, so of course I just said one window cell or maybe some institutions, storekeeper who register your daily in and daily out. So that can be a part. So like again, if you're going to be employing some kind of long-term study, or are you going to be doing it at one place one time, or are you going to be analyzing it for over the last 10 years? For example, the governance data, are you going to be evaluating for the right now, like 2021, or are you going to be evaluating 2020, or are you taking some kind of time periods, maybe 5 years, 10 years, 15 years data, and then kind of checking that has the good governance increased based on only one indicator as of right now we've discussed, rate of disposal, the rate of answering back. Okay, so that really helps you in like visualizing or concept, I would say operationalizing your research. Again, what sort of sample? How more application do we need? Do we need it for annually, monthly? Right? So that is there. What technique should be there, like data collection? Maybe some performers, you get it from performers. Maybe you'll get it from soft copy, Excel files. How are you going to be extracting it? How you will be going to be analyzing it? And at the end, that also sometimes fall under the heading of research design, in which you will be formatting your research or using some kind of particular style. So that is right there, out there. So NUST has its own research style. It has some rules and regulations which you need to be following, and that will also help you in research design, because some departments in the world, they have their own specific or standardized headings. Even if you like, let's talk about some research papers. So even if you see research paper, it has some commonalities. Like it will follow introduction, literature review portion, methods and data collection, data analysis techniques, results and discussion. So these headings, these style really helps you in designing your research or formulating your research design. For example, you pick out a thesis from your seniors from the library, you just shuffle it around, and then you need to know, okay, on the first page, I need to define my scope. Okay, in the second page, I need to define my limitations. On the fourth page, I need to write objectives. So what you're doing, you are now strategizing, you are actually formulating your research design. You're actually helping, or you can say logically thinking that how your research will be structured. So that also falls under the bigger or framework, bigger picture of research design. A plan, a strategy, okay, a plan. Okay, we need this type of data to resolve this problem. Okay, how we're going to be collecting it and how we're going to be analyzing. So that is a strategy. And lastly, maybe you need to also understand some constraints which you will be facing during the research period. Yeah, so this was I was talking to you about that. Overall, basically, this is a overall research design in which you will be conceptualizing and then operationalizing. So research design is basically a component of research design in which you have already formulated your hypothesis, conceptual framework, objectives, and then you are actually going to be converting it to research design. So again, of course, we will go into step-by-step research operationalizing concepts as well. So this is just a generic viewpoint, and in the coming lectures, then we will be talking about how to define your objectives and coordination schema as well. So this is just like it is a main component of research operationalizing. By the way, coming back to another question, what is the difference between operationalizing and conceptualizing? Anyone? Conceptualization and operationalization. Yes, Rida, please.
सर जो कॉन्सेप्चुअलाइजेशन है वो यही है ना कि मतलब एक वर्ड है उसके डिफरेंट मीनिंग्स हो सकते हैं, ठीक है, मतलब एक वर्ड को आप डिफरेंट मीनिंग्स पहले आप देखो कि ये जो वर्ड है इसका डिफरेंट फील्ड में ये मीनिंग्स हो सकते हैं, लाइक यू कैन हैव अ वास्ट स्टडी ऑफ दैट वर्ड। और सर जो ऑपरेशनलाइजेशन है वो फिर ये कि आप स्पेसिफाई करो अपने कॉन्टेक्स्ट में कि आप क्या चाह रहे हो इस वर्ड से,
Like how you are defining that concept.
यस सर,
is operationalizing.
बिल्कुल।
What is your definition? You might receive these comments in your papers or research. What is your operational definition of district? Now, district in America, district means different. In Pakistan, district is something different. In Brazil, district is something different. The word district, okay? Sub-district. Let's call it Tehsil, for example. So you need to know what is Tehsil, but how you define Tehsil. Tehsil is different meanings, like in Sindh it's Taluka, not Tehsil. So that means your research will not be valid for Sindh or something like that. So you need to be operationalizing your research. For example, you might have I'll give you an example, like you travel from motorway. How many have seen Top City housing scheme, like Top City? Just raise your hand. Top City, maybe you heard the name of it. Okay. So now the word Top City implies that it's a city, but in fact it's not. So the word means something different. And when you look into it, it's not a city, it's just a small housing scheme with the name of city. So like the word city has now if I define what is city, how do you define city? For some of you might be no, city is a very small city. For some of you, no, only metropolitan is a city. So city is a very generic word. It can be even housing scheme. Okay, so you need to operationalize it. That how do you define city? A population of this much, or a settlement with this kind of characteristics, that is viewed as a city, and you have now taken city as a sample, and you are now working on the city, on this city, particular city. Get my point? Any questions? Please feel free to ask questions. So I think okay. If no questions, then I'll stop the recording and then we can go for a break. Okay, thank you.